Welcome back to Partnerships Unraveled, the podcast where we unravel the mysteries about partnerships and channel on a weekly basis. My name's Alex Whitford. I'm the VP of Revenue here at Channext, and this week I'm very excited to welcome our special guest, Jeff. How are you doing?
Doing well, Alex. I appreciate you having me on. It's a beautiful day in paradise here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. I think the prep call really sort of opened my eyes in terms of running a whole revenue organization where channel's a component part and how that sort of builds your channel strategy. Maybe for the uninitiated, Jeff, you can give us a little bit of an introduction about who you are and what you do.
Certainly, yes. How about I'll start a little bit with myself, then I'll explain ArmorCode for the folks on the podcast or listening to the podcast as well. So my background is one of starting in tech quite some time ago now. I don't know if I want to state the number of years, but if I use the term frame relay and Cat5 cabling, people might recognize that. I started in telecom kind of in layer one, right? So foundationally doing the work and understanding the tech were hand in hand for me. I worked for what was called a small interconnect at the time. From there, I'd moved into systems management and visibility technology at Quest Software. Spent a number of years there, and then did a couple gigs in the startup land, and eventually found myself at what I would call an iconic cybersecurity partner, which is now known as Optiv. But back in the day, Accuvant was brand new on the west coast of the United States. And over time, we merged with a great VAR leader in the East called Fishnet, right? And together we became Optiv, so I had the good fortune of being part of something that really didn't exist at the time, which was a cybersecurity focused partner. That taught me a lot. Right. And then after that, I went back to the vendor side and spent 6 years or so at Netscope with another wonderful option to learn from both great sales and channel leadership, which has helped kind of build to where I am now, which is carrying my own brand and running all of go-to-market for ArmorCode. So I've got our sales teams, our channel teams, biz dev teams, technical teams. And so I get to build the whole thing for go-to-market outside of our digital marketing and my CMO partners side of the responsibilities there. So that's me in a nutshell. Just a humble servant, Alex.
Oh, awesome! It sounds like a really simple job, not complicated at all, managing all those disparate pieces.
It's all in perspective. It's fun.
Yeah, good. So one of the things that a lot of our audience spend a lot of time thinking about, wondering, attacking, panicking about is there comes a moment when a business starts to scale where it has to make a call on, are we doing channel or not, right? And some dip their toe in, some wade in, some invest way too late. What are the signals that founders should be sort of looking for to go, okay, now's the time? And maybe talk us through some of the mistakes that you see people make.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So in fact, that's a large part of why I'm in the role now is that the timing was right for ArmorCode and Nikhil, my chief enthusiasm officer, to drive this. Right. And so there's a couple ways I look at it. If you're a founder that already has channel relationships, you can go day one, but you have to set your expectations, right? Your approach to the channel is going to be a little bit different, right? If you're really trying to scale the channel, like where a person like me comes into the business, I've got experience both on the OEM side and on the channel side. I think there's 3 or 4 things that are important. Number one, you've got to have a high impact use case that the channel can bridge with the customer. They're not the place to land if you're still trying to determine product market fit. If you're experimenting with your ICP and the impact you can have in different segments of the market, that's risky and less interesting to the channel, right? They want a measure of reliability and success, at least something that's valuable to the customer. A lot of them are great at, or a number of channel partners are great at an innovation lab or really thinking about, well, what's new and going on. And there are a lot of customers they have that want to know those things. But will that lead to revenue or not and scale? If you're that early, maybe not. If you're in experimentation mode, you got to set your expectations. Net is, I think channel really starts to connect when they start to see a pull market, right? If customers are asking them, hey, have you heard about ArmorCode? Or, we're trying to solve a problem in this space, ASPM or exposure management, whatever terms they hear in the channel. And it's important just to be setting the groundwork there to be associated with that when that pull market starts happening. Second of all, super important, there has to be some adjacency to how the channel already drives revenue. Like, how are you accretive to their business, right? If you fall into the selfish trap, which we all do, of what we need, you're not really thinking about what they need. You've got to figure out how you align to how they already go to market. What's their core of how they're driving revenue? Third, I think it's natural for most partners to gravitate toward the broad scalable markets. They have the big lines, the transaction volume, the run rate, with the bigger vendors in cyber. So you've also got to be clear with the channel on how and why you differentiate in order to pull some of that mind share over. So in sum, if it's core to your GTM motion, timing and commitment are important. I think you have to be clear if you're in or out. You can't be on the fence. There's no channel when convenient. You either drive a channel strategy or you don't. But all those things said, I think that's the bulk of what I would think about. Right? That'll vary. There will be outliers. Some founders know the channel already. That's the first place they start. Hey, I need to get in front of some of your customers. I've got an idea. Can I bounce it off of them? But most founders are driving their own sales to begin with and bringing in, an early rep and things like that. And so I think it's best to really have what I explained around product market fit first. So
yeah, 100%. To me, channel can be distilled into it's a scaling factor, right? And so to scale before you found PMF and you're still in startup mode doesn't make sense. Now, where I think becomes really interesting is when you want to build a broad base channel. That's when we're trying to hit hyperscale, right? We can't hire the amount of reps that we need to hit our revenue goals. That means we need to disseminate some of that down and delegate that down into partners. And that's where building that sort of cohesive plan. One of the things that you said in a previous catch up, which I thought was pretty interesting, is the intersection between channel and really what that means around a customer success approach. Talk to me about what that means.
I mean, at risk of sounding obvious here, I think that any good sales leader, channel leader, team campaign has to start with customer journey, right? If that's not your focus, if you're trying to drive your needs and your agenda and you're not really thinking about that, I think those are often, marginally successful campaigns, right? So I guess a way to think about it for me is channel first is not economic. Customer success first is economic, right? If you have a channel strategy that's built around the customer and the channel sees that, they're naturally going to come along. Secondly, partners have to live in those accounts for a really long time. So if you breach trust or create friction with their customer, is likely the last time you're going to hear from that partner, right? They have a long memory, and not only is it important to think about that when it comes to your company, but I would argue that most of my success in time has come with my personal brand. And you got to think about that too. You can't burn the channel. You can't burn the customer. You can't make promises you can't keep. So it's better to be transparent, right, at an early stage, right? If what you're looking for is, hey, I've got gaps, I don't know my product market fit yet, just tell them, right? Have a conversation with that customer. They're more inclined to maybe think about how they can help you be a design partner or something like that. So if you're transparent, about those kinds of things, that's really the goal. So the bottom line is, in order to build a sustainable channel program, might seem obvious, but partners spend years building trust in those accounts and have to see the value delivered for their customer before they put their lifeline and income at risk. So
yeah, I love that.
How I think about it.
I love that thought about authenticity, right? I think I was having a conversation with a senior channel executive, and I was sharing a story about I made an enormous mistake on a quote. About 3, maybe 6 months into my channel career, it took margin off rather than adding margin on, which is that's a silly mistake to make. And I called the partner, and I basically said, look, entirely my fault. I'm going to wear the cost, but I just need you to know, because next time when this product is significantly more expensive, it's because I messed up this order. And so, it's not your fault, it's my fault, but I just need you to know. He was really good. He turned around and said, look, Alex, here's what we're going to do. Next 5 orders, we'll wear it between us. You'll make hardly any money across 5 orders, but yeah, don't worry, we don't need you to get into a bad place with management, and we'll cover you. I'm still friends with that partner 10 years later. And I strongly believe that reputation is built in the bad times, not the
100%.
good times. Yeah. And so the authenticity to come and be like, hey guys, I need your help. I'm not quite sure how to do this. That's why the channel is an amazing place to be, because you can get free answers from partners that maybe customers would be slightly more reluctant to.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of reps that I've become familiar with over the years that are friends of mine that they've made a living at that. They know which partners to go to. I've got a new solution. I vetted it. It's solid. Let's get in front of XYZ account and XYZ account, and they've made a living just being really authentic with both the partner and the customers, right? And that's you're right. The trust is huge, right? I had a CISO years ago at Experian back in the day, still a very close friend of mine, say, I don't care whose fault it is. I don't care if it's your product or not. I've got a problem to solve. And if you're my partner, you're going to help me solve it. Right. And I never forgot that. Little things you remember along the way in your career. Right. So similarly, right. It's like, yeah, you got to just own it. Right.
Yeah,
But
100%.
I think there's a lot of pressure. I know there's a lot of pressure, especially on new sellers trying to make their name in their career and hit a quarterly number. Right. And it's always a balance you got to strike between, making sure your sustainability is long term. Right. And, I'm a sales leader. I've got to drive a number, but that's also something to be honest with the customer and the partner with about. Right. You got to state your objectives very clearly. Right.
Yeah.
If you earn the right, maybe they'll help you out.
Yeah.
It's
It's actually one of my favorite things about working in the channel, because I get to talk to partners about business. So, we're not just talking about why a product's great and how this is going to build value, but it's like, hey, by the way, I've got a board meeting in 2 weeks and I'm up for a promotion. It'd be really helpful if this deal can work its way through the system. And that sort of stuff, you'd be amazed how often partners be like, yeah, no worries. Like, that sounds like a really important reason for me to pick up the phone and chase a little bit harder. But if you don't have that relationship to rely on, it's a really tough place to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Sort of back to our last conversation, right? If you've already done that work and that groundwork, that legwork is there, you're in good shape, right? I find some reps are really good at quickly developing. They have strong, EIQ, and they can get that trust faster. But a lot of that usually takes time, right?
Yeah.
Like you almost have to go through some mistake or some pain to prove, kind of who you are and your integrity, right?
Correct. We opened the conversation with just how simple it is, your job, because you manage all these different areas.
Super easy.
Yeah. But you're also building what is interesting about channel is it's complicated. You've got GSIs, VARs, tech alliances, referral partners. How do you decide where to invest in what order to what gain? Like, that's a complicated matrix to pull together. Talk me through your motion.
Certainly. Yeah. And you're right. It can be. And I also see, quite often, folks newer to different routes to market is how I like to think about it. Spend an awful lot of time in places that aren't going to yield the revenue when they need it to, right? And it's exciting to think about channels like the GSIs and MSPs, but you're a dime a dozen as a technology partner. So you got to get a little bit down the path before they start to want to change out a 10-year relationship with a different vendor in your space or whatever. So a couple of things like for me, first off, finding the right partners with a focus on your problem set and that have customer trust is key. Might sound like a unicorn, but they're out there, right? You have for us, and I won't name names on this call, but we've had some very specific partners that they have a focus in our area, our space, right? They have different vendors they work with, large and small, but they at least have a focus in what we do, right? So they understand that. That could be a big national, could be a local regional, but they've got to have, most importantly, reps have to have the relationships, but they rely on their own internal architects and teams to understand the different solutions. So you got to be able to talk to that level too, right? So with smaller teams and newer companies, got to prioritize the right VARs and not just shotgun and spread out across the market. We only have so much currency, so it has to be invested in the right places. One of the questions I probably have the most a pet peeve of mine, the most disdain for, is when one of our reps goes to a customer and says, "Which partner do you want to work with?" Don't ever say that, right? Drive the customer toward the partner that's going to give the right mutual value, right? That may or may not be an existing partner that customer has, but it should be. But if you've had the investment, this is the reciprocity. You've gotten the commitment, you've gotten that tech buy-in at the partner that says, I believe in what you're doing. I've seen it, right? A lot of them, they're more risk averse, right? They want you to prove it in a customer first. So sometimes you feed that. They learn from that customer. They see the value that way the best. But somehow you got that technical trust, right? Then you go back in and have that conversation, and then it can accelerate it. It's important to know you can't lump. So let's move over to other routes to market. For us, we're at a point now where GSIs and MSPs are very important, but you can't lump them into the same bucket. They think very differently than a VAR, whether it's a national or regional, with whatever focus they've got on what territory. They're thinking about longer term IT ops, larger risk management types of projects. They probably have 10 different lines of business that, this feeds, into potentially what we do. So you got to know how they work. Right. And they often, when a partner like me or a vendor like me tries to build into a GSI tech stack, you got to realize you're probably going up against a technology that's been in their tech stack for 10 years. Like, it's not a quick endeavor. And there's lots of business units, multiple stakeholders. At a certain point, if I could resource it, which we'll get to, I would put one account team on one GSI. That's how big they can be, right? Cover everything around the globe, right? So, but back to the earlier conversation, you got to know how your customer buys, right? How do they consume? Is it, are they a CapEx shop, OpEx shop? Do they have, services and trust with a GSI now? Would that be the better route to market? Or is it, a more specialized, partner with some, deep dive project-based capabilities in my space? So understanding the customer, back to that point, is super important. Those routes to market and how they buy. Adding in the hyperscalers, right? Does it help the customer to burn down discount credits in Amazon, if they transact through that, right? So these are all the components to think about that can't be lumped into channel, right? It's routes to market and it's different things. And you got to have different layers of conversations and exposure there. So, but you nail it in one GSI globally can take, that can be the kingmaker. So
maybe to focus in on that GSI as an example, I think one of the really complicated things when you're building out a channel is you've got to define early success when that success rate often isn't revenue, right? A GSI can be a 12, 24-month lift before we've seen $1 transact. How do you define success early on in sort of program channel operational design when, I don't know, sourced pipeline or close won revenue isn't going to be the lagging metric in that early period?
Yeah, I mean, the simple answer is you got to find customer number one that is a test bed, a litmus test, right? If you're successful there, you got to feed them, right? If you're in a deal and your GSI is in that deal, this is the maturity of understanding how a customer buys, right? Who are the key partners they trust and rely on, right? It could be both a really strong VAR and it could be a GSI. Right. Well, you got to have a conversation with your champion and, look to engage there. But it does take, GSIs are short on, they're long on trust, I should say. It doesn't happen overnight. So you got to find that first win. It's got to make sense architecturally. You're selling, above and below the line per se. And then back to kind of understanding your customer. Most of the big GSIs, they have their own internal teams and politics to fight, right? You've got, large, long-standing firms that are both on the audit side and, usually audit and risk advisory are going to be separate, for the big companies. If they're an audit customer, they're not doing more of the operational things in a lot of cases. Most cases, it has to be separate. But you got to understand that what dependencies, I'm introducing a risk to that service. If I don't have a track record, if they don't have a customer they can point to and say, look, we were successful here, right? So you kind of got to feed it, right? I could take any number, which we've done, of my existing customers that we'd landed early where we're scaling and successful. And this is where we're at now. We're having conversations about how do we bring the GSI to that to operationally help the customer. So they'll be good for expand, right? I guess, as we talk this through, we're kind of riffing on this one. I would say that, some GSIs are better than others at this, but most of them are really good at taking the ball from the 20-yard line after the special teams is off the field and you're in a deal and helping you close it. They're not necessarily your lead source, right?
So,
but if you want to expand and scale and be sticky in that customer, they're amazing at that, right? Because they're running IT operations and the ticketing and the help desk and the, the things often that you're going to need to make sure your deployments are successful. So
I really like that point, because I often hear people, and I know we sparred on this before the call, they go, well, I've onboarded these partners, and partners are a BDR team, right? That's their job. They're there to go do new logo acquisition. Talk to me about what role partners should really play, and I suppose what the communication dynamic should look like, so that there isn't that sort of misalignment.
Sure. I think it's, it's funny. I'll never forget this. I had a really good friend of mine now years ago would come into my office when I was at a VAR, and he was always happy, and, as opposed to VARs that would, or manufacturer reps that would, not be happy if you weren't bringing him deals or whatnot. And I asked John at the time, I'm like, why are you always so happy? He worked at McAfee back in the day. He said, Jeff, because I keep my expectations really, really low. Like, I just don't expect much out of you. And I said, my God, that's a really honest answer. I appreciate that. You're going to make me want to work harder for you now. Right. So he just had the right approach and the right attitude. Right. So it kind of works both ways. Like the channel, they could be, look, our goal is, over time channel source business, but that only comes with proof. Right. We have had success on, they're busy, right? The partners have a lot going on. They can become a BDR source. That's not where they start. But that's nirvana, right? Is if I can drive, and I do have some evidence of this now. I've got one or two just fantastic partners where I have now turned, we as my team, I hate using the word I because it's my team doing all this work. A special shout out to KJ and Natasha. Thank you. Ram, you as well on the GSIs. Got to get that on the podcast. But we have turned the corner to where we're seeing more than half of the pipeline with a couple of these partners is sourced by them, right? Awesome. So it's their efforts and that is a huge, huge reward for everybody involved in that effort, right? Including my CEO, right? Because that's really the goal. However, it is super, super important to really find the right partner. We have just as much value and success in the right influence, right? My advice to every channel partner out there is engage. Don't just use lip service. Don't tell me something. Don't glad hand me. Help me, right? And if you don't have time, say that, right? Say, hey, man, I got stuff going on. You're going to have to do some legwork on your own, but get to a certain point and I can get you to the right people, right? And we've got deals like that going on with just some amazing partnerships where we're at levels we would not be at with our own individual selling efforts, right? Like I said, they live in these accounts forever. They sit down and have dinner with even the CFO in many cases, the right partners, right? They can be kingmakers. So accelerating trust, advancing increasing conversion rates as a result is also a big value of the channel. Pipeline, yes, but shortening close cycles, increasing conversion rates, accelerating trust, you can't overlook that, especially at our stage. That's hugely key, right? There will come a time when it's just autopilot. Hopefully that's the goal for every company, right? But I'm starting to see the scale at a early adopter market, I would say kick in. But those are kind of the areas I see the most value, or the alignment to your question.
Yes, sometimes I think get into these conversations and I think about it, and people can't see the wood from the trees. I sort of sit there and go, but what's the hardest part of sales? And you go, it's new logo acquisition. We all know that. And you go, okay. And so what's the plan? We're going to delegate the hardest thing away. You go, okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Whereas you go, like you said, especially if you're working on large enterprise deals, average sales cycle goes down from 300 days to 200 days. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Right. That's unbelievable. That's a CFO's dream to be able to pull that cash in and reinvest it and help the scaling engine flywheel. And if partners are able to help facilitate that and grow the ACV and grow the conversion rate and do it faster, that provides huge value. And then, Jeff, you're absolutely correct. The ultimate outcome is that, and then they are at a confidence and an understanding and enablement level that they can do the new logo acquisition. But
Yeah.
to ask partners to start there, I sort of sit there and go, that's not even how we train AEs, right? Like, we don't bring an AE and then go, no information, off you go. Can you go and close Nestle? That would be that'd be lunacy. And yet somehow we sort of sit there and go, well, hopefully the partner will do that, because I think that's a good strategy.
Yeah, no, there's never, I would encourage my team you don't have to give up deal control. You're just partnering on it, right? You're getting better, trust, transparency, visibility, and, hopefully closing more large deals faster, right?
Awesome.
That's the nirvana of it. The whole top of funnel effort, we still have to own our own outcomes and destiny there, right?
Perfect.
Even if it's, it's a win to me if a partner simply says, hey, you know what, we've had success with ArmorCode. I know you're looking at 2 or 3 other solutions, but you really got to get them in the discussion, right? That's a win, man. I mean, sometimes I think manufacturers want exclusivity when, you're not giving it to the channel, right? If I could sign an agreement with a scalable partner and say, you guarantee me this much, I'll give you everything I'm doing, right? But that's not reality, right? So it's okay to have competitors in deals. It's not ideal. We don't love it, but and you don't want to breach trust and give away trade secrets. We don't need the channel doing that, which they don't. The right partners don't do those things. But that's sort of top of funnel for me with the channel is just like any other lead source, right? Hey, if we've got an introduction, there's a warm handoff, we get a meeting out of it. That's still a win.
Awesome. We sat down a few weeks ago to sort of prep this call, and I've been stealing a phrase that I've never heard anyone say, but I heard you say, and I thought it really helped wrap up the sort of symbolism and what you're trying to build. You just talked about your pursuit team, AE, SE, BDR, marketing, channel, and I really like that idea. One, I like it because of the imagery, right? We are chasing down business, but also in terms of the alignment. What makes that model work in practice?
Biggest thing is shared accountability, right? I mean, it's real easy to, get on a pipeline discussion and talk about, deals that are in early stage pipe, news that was already created, right? The idea of the pursuit team is to drive a more proactive strategy or news that was already reported. The strategy is how are we going to go create the news, right? How do I look at, what are the campaigns that are working, that are having the most impact? What are the top white space accounts? I'm already working these accounts. I've got, some number of really important accounts that I'm not in yet. And then who are the key partners very specifically that are mapped to those accounts? And not only that, but then in my plan as a pursuit team, who are the 5 specific people at partners that I'm going to talk to multiple times a week, right? So it's a combined effort. If end of the day, the seller that owns the territory and the number is responsible to quarterback the team, but the team, the quarterback can't run the ball, throw the ball, and score every touchdown, right? To use an American football analogy, right? You got to have a right guard and a left guard. You got to have a running back and a wide receiver. You got to have optionality in the plays, and the only way to have that is shared accountability. There's one scoreboard. That's ArmorCode, right? The way I look at even top of funnel demand gen is of course we have attribution, but to me, every new meeting or every lead comes from a combination of things. First touch on the website might have happened 2 years ago. New rep comes in, has a relationship. Great channel partner finds the connection. We're at a golf event somewhere or something. Who do you attribute that to? It's one team, right? That shared accountability is the important concept. So a pursuit team is what landed with me years ago to drive that concept home. So hopefully that helps answer what you were thinking.
It's a perfect answer. Well, I like to think of myself sometimes as a one-man pursuit team, but I'm backed up by a wonderful production team on the podcast. But we're always looking to find our next best guest. Jeff, I know you've got someone in mind.
I do. Oh, I'm going to say his name on the podcast now. Sheldon Muir at Torque. Recommend that you spend some time with this team. Alex is great. And it's really been an enjoyable number of meetings and conversations. In fact, I look forward to joining Alex for a beer in Amsterdam when I'm out there this summer. So I'll be looking for you.
Awesome. We're coming for
Thanks
you,
for the
Shelby.
service you're providing to the market too. This is really cool.
No, Jeff, it's been awesome having you on today, and thanks for sharing your wisdom. It's been great.
You bet. Yeah. I would land with, look, cyber is different than a lot of categories. There's no winning, just losing without partners, right? If you're going to scale the business, the channel, I love and appreciate everything, all of you do. Again, shout out to my team. I'm the face man on this, but I am nothing without them. That includes all of my team, but in particular, KJ, Natasha, and Ram, thank you very much for all the efforts to scale the business. So
Awesome,
thank
Jeff.
you. Appreciate it,
Yeah,
Alex.
it's been great having you on. Thanks so much, buddy.
You got it. Yeah. Good talking to you.